like you're really into someone, but the other person doesn't really care. That sucks.
Or I mean, chrono.
Yeah, did they even let you do one?
We are live. Welcome back, party people, for another house party live.
What's up?
It's just the DAOhaus crew this week. We're gonna kind of do a rundown on what happened Monday. You can even see, I think, by our reduced attendance that it's been sort of an exhausting week, in a good way, I think. But thanks everybody for joining us. If you're watching, hit that like button, that subscribe button, all that fun stuff. And yeah, thanks guys for coming to hang out for another one of these. Where's a good place to start on this one? I feel like it is the usual news segment up top. the CCO, the unleashing of the house token that we've been talking about.
It happened. It happened. It lasted 85
for,
seconds or 75 seconds, whatever the hell.
Yeah, I think the official was 80 seconds.
Yeah, that's which was a lot faster than we expected. To be sure.
So should we start with what was the story of your experience of that day, Ben?
Well, mine's pretty boring but meme worthy, I guess. I set my alarm for 4:30 a.m. and I hit the snooze button, and then I woke up at 7:30 a.m., which was about an hour and a half after the sale had already completed, because it was done in about a minute. So snooze you lose, I guess, is the meme there, quite literally.
Yeah, we had some kind of mixed reviews on the process. Some people really liked the interface. And the fact that everyone was able to get in so fast, I think speaks to that the interface worked pretty well. There were definitely some complaints too.
Well, I think to back it up, so Friday evening-ish for most people, we, as promised, released a lengthy post with all of the instructions for, how to actually do this and our methodology for setting up the whitelist that to anyone who watches this or listens to this show, won't be a surprise, right? We were talking about what that list was going to look like for a while. And ultimately we think we went pretty broad with it while still including everyone, within what we would call the DAO community. And we did that by literally looking at on-chain stuff for who has interacted with DAOs, taken part in DAOs as members of DAOs, other things, taken part in snapshot votes, things like that. And then we spent all weekend dealing with people on Twitter and in Discord telling us that it wasn't open enough and this was an unfair launch. And they were, and I voted in 2 snapshots once. How come I'm not on the list? Stuff like that. Some of the complaints were legitimate. We did find out that at some point, I think our snapshot list was shorter than it should have been, which was our fault. But we fixed it before the whitelist happened.
Yeah.
And I think,
which is cool. We had that weekend to do that. We had that weekend for people to come in and say, "Hey, why am I not on the list?" And then we were able to go and check and make sure that they had done some stuff and whatever. So it was nice for that.
I think our final list was 70,000-ish people who were eligible to take part in the CCO. And I feel like before we even jump into that, it's worth kind of talking about what's the answer for the people that have been in Twitter and Discord, et cetera, saying, well, I'm here in Discord. How come I can't, how come you're not just letting in everybody in the Discord chat? Because I'm right here.
Right. Which, I guess that kind of goes back to what the purpose of the CCO was and things, right? And towards progressive decentralization, which starts at the center of community and spreads itself out from that. So the farther you're away from that community at the core, that core community of contributors, the probably less likely you'll be able to contribute into a CCO in general. But, so our kind of thinking there was just, start with all the DAOs that we are directly interacting with, which is Moloch DAOs, and then add a bunch of other external, Aragon DAOs and snapshots and various types of decentralized governance to extend that core, right? So that was really all we were doing. It wasn't hey, every single person in the world can do this, because there's not room for everybody in the, we weren't trying to just say that's, but the other part was aren't just raising an infinite amount of money. It was a very considered, practical amount of capital that we could use to collectively to build the platform forward for a period of time. Basically, that's it. It wasn't just hey, everybody, are we worth $50 million? Do you want to give us $50 million? That wasn't the game here. The game was to get the community some funds to build more value into the platform.
Yeah, and I think the way I've been framing it, I mean, even before we started talking about this, but just to the extent that I had a voice in planning this process, like the idea of what is a fair launch comes down to, it has to be limited by some factors if you want to responsibly, progressively decentralize a project. And so the idea of a fair launch can't be it's a mad dash free for all for everyone with internet access to ape into the thing and like see what happens, because why not? Like on some level you have to responsibly limit what's happening to some subset, right? And in this case we had 70,000 people on a list. Like that's pretty broad. I mean that's that's the entire population of Michigan University like Ohio State, like
right, knowing that only 300 or 400 are going to be able to participate in the end, right?
And then ultimately, like it's also totally fair for someone launching a product to say, look, if you don't even know what DAOs are and you're just hanging out Telegram channels left and right looking for your next pump opportunity, like that's not good for us necessarily as the keepers of this product. And I think you've seen a lot of products that crack it wide open because they think, oh, this is our opportunity to establish our, what's our market value? What's the market cap of the value of our thing? And like, you do that prematurely and it'll tank your whole project. And it'll also bring people into this decentralized like group of core contributors who don't care because they're just there to get to pump the value of the token. And so they're going to drive decisions that pump the value of the token, which may not help with the platform, right? So
but I think there is a place for that. It's just kind of a lose-lose situation.
Yeah.
Because if we just open up the doors to everyone, then the outcome would have been the same, but just with bots, right? Crowding everyone out.
Right.
And then, so before the sale, everyone's like, expand it. And then after the sale, everyone was like, why'd you expand it so much? It's like, you should have just let your core team contribute, because none of our core team were even able to like participate. But
right.
But I mean, yeah, so it's a hard problem. I think we can continue working on trying to figure out a way to solve it where everyone's happy. But
yeah, definitely definitely a lot of things to pick up from the experience, and to iterate towards just making it better.
Well, I think ultimately what's exciting is what Deacon already alluded to, which is the technology worked. There were similar opportunities to jump in on projects 3 years ago that crashed the whole network, right? Like the tech failed, and it ended up being an unfair situation because like literally people didn't get in because the network crashed. That's not what happened in this case. Like you could argue that we had the jam up that we had and it went so fast and felt the way that it did because it was fair. Because I didn't have an advantage over the next person as long as they were on the white list, right? Which we already talked about. No one had an advantage over someone else. It was literally just thousands of people trying to press the button first. and in that sense, like some people lose that lottery drawing essentially. There's intangibles like was your computer plugged into hardline internet, for example? Maybe could have made a difference. But in that context, like, it was as fair as it could be. And it's exciting that the technology exists that anyone who's interested can, and I mean that, it's not necessarily that they get to, because there's other things that might get in the way, like everything we'll probably talk about for the next 20 minutes. But like, it wasn't the tech that stopped them from doing it. It wasn't banks that stopped them from doing it. It wasn't, proprietary infrastructure around who's sophisticated enough to join a project or right.
I think that was another thing with our whitelist was that we basically whitelisted crypto natives, like people that knew what they were doing. There wasn't a lot of people like that didn't understand, why you would wrap a token or why you would do a approval. I think what really happened was people did that all up front because they knew what was happening. They were like, okay, I need to approve this token. I need to whitelist or wrap it. And so when I get the chance, I'm just going to hit the button, and it's all that we need. And so we had like a big group of people doing that because we whitelisted people that have used crypto before. Yeah. So those were the ones that were all like, that got in front of people, I guess.
Well, and so then some of that becomes barrier to entry in so far as the knowledge. But again, I'm not sure what to do about that piece, right? Like, I've been hanging around here for 5 years. That's why I know what I'm doing. In 5 years, there will be exponentially more people who have been hanging around for 5 years and know what they're doing now. So, like, that's just, that part of the process is just sort of part of it. But so that's to talk about the whitelist and kind of the idea of fairness and trying to execute a fair launch, et cetera. To answer the very pointed question that came up a bunch of times, why couldn't we just, give stuff to the people in the Discord chats? People should go look at the Gatehouse chat. I think some people on Discord don't know that we know when they joined the server. So some people showed up after the CCO and then started saying, this wasn't fair. I've been in Discord for 2 years. We're like, we haven't the server hasn't even existed for. But yeah, then to the experience of, Monday, I woke up, a bit early enough to walk across the house to the office and get ready to go. But I had my WX die lined up, and then I saw it going as fast as it was, and I had to unlock the token, and I thought that once I saw the numbers going, I thought that was going to be what kept me from getting in. But I don't think in the end that it did. So just barely I made it, but just by the luck of, hitting the button fast enough. And then, yeah, as far as I can tell, I mean, for anyone here or listening who watched it, what you'll have seen is the indicator showed that we were up to 300,000 XDAI, and then the site went down. As far as
that was like in the first block, right?
Yeah. So what happened there was we hit the cap so fast that the UI didn't even get to update to show the next number at the cap. And while that was happening, we didn't know what was happening either. We just knew that the transactions were flying in. And so, bot attacks are a thing in this context. And we thought maybe, that's what was happening. So we turned off the housekeeper bot, which we'll talk about in a sec. And then also put up the, down for maintenance thing on the page just to essentially stop everything. But the core thing to know is nothing broke. We just flipped all the protective switches that we had built in like immediately because the signal we were seeing was this might be essentially a bot attack, right? Do you guys want to talk a bit about the sort of housekeeper part of that? I guess more like how it was structured such that we had these sort of dump outs in place. Because I think that's an interesting thing to call out with the CCO structure and sort of how you can do it through DAOhaus versus, for example, just having a raw smart contract that you send some, like some ETH to, and then you get back a token.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, like the purpose of the bot, I guess, right? It's like all it was like the contributions were automatically submitting proposals to a DAO. Those in a Malik DAO, those proposals need to be sponsored, which moves it into the voting period, and then they need to be voted on. And then once it's voted on and it passes, then it needs to be executed. So we basically just set up a bot to do those things for us.
Right. So without a bot, that would be humans, right? So in a DAO, that would be, people go and do that. And I think that puts people in the chain for this CCO process in a place where maybe we don't want them, right? Because that's the place where, I would look at it and go, okay, is that actually that they're letting everyone in, or is there like a committee going, oh, we don't like that guy, forget it, right?
Right.
So for us, that's where the bot came in. So the bot was checking addresses against the whitelist and automatically sponsoring and then voting through processing proposals that matched the whitelist, which is how everyone else knows that we had control to turn the bot on or off, but not to like select, cherry pick proposals as they were coming
Yeah, it
through.
didn't. And I think it's important there to say, yeah, the bot didn't stop any contributions. It just stopped the contributions from moving into the voting periods and things. So that's all we were doing, really. We're just like making sure that we turned it off so that we could put human eyes on it, because it went so damn fast. Like you said, we had concerns that there may have been some bot activity or something, but so we just wanted to make sure that all contributions went through the predefined rules. And it did. So then we just turned the bot back on and let it rip.
And on a tech side, we had talked about doing a new contract with a Merkle root, and we could have basically enforced the things that we're talking about with the bot through the smart contract. But at the same time, we actually wanted to show like that a DAO can be used for other things. So we wanted to show the technology that it's like, sometimes it makes sense. And so, obviously like the amount of support was way more than we expected. In hindsight, we probably would have done a few things differently, but still it worked. And having that second layer of both human and programmatic eyes on it was good, because it was able to let us verify that everything, especially in this situation, verify that it wasn't bots, that it was really just a ton of interested people all pressing the button at the exact same time. I think it was all in 1 or 2 blocks.
Yeah, it's still crazy to me that the basic, front end interface on the internet can interact with the blockchain and somehow do all of that within 80 seconds. And the blockchain, was a big part of that, right? Because like once the transactions were sent, then it's off of the interface's load, and it's just the blockchain doing its thing. And I definitely think that was like an interesting part of how so much capital was able to be like, just like distributed around that quickly.
Yeah, I mean,
Really
if you've ever tried to wire anything, it's not wiring money is, not an easy process, unfortunately, or I should say smooth process. It's not really difficult. It's just steps and then weightings and things. To Deacon's point, I think like this kind of the broader thing that we'll just be coming back to forever in the context of DAOhaus is, it's about DAOs are about software to help humans coordinate. And as much as like, we had a great conversation with Amin about, smart contracts that we can trust now, and we know that they work, and we can, trust them for certain things. There are aspects of this that still are about serving, the human element. And so, a lot of this is this broader exploration of what those lines are, what should be run by contract and what should be run by humans. And I think, as messy as maybe Monday felt for a lot of people, it feels to me like we found one of those lines, because in the end, everything worked properly. Everyone that, followed the rules and was in sequence and everything like that got to take part in the the CCO. And we had the tools in place to stop it and say, oh, this looks wonky, let's go to the humans. And then, we were able to double check and then let it proceed.
Back to the bots.
Yeah, and then give it back to the bots.
Right, yeah.
which
To
is
our
ultimately,
bots.
yeah,
Yeah, our bots. Yeah.
right. Which is ultimately an important part of the whole thing, I think.
It really was, which was just like created, or like the whole had never had happened before. We'd never done that before ever, and yeah, that was really awesome. I think Sam was the main one who got all that up and running, but it was really impressive.
Yeah, maybe we could talk a little bit about in hindsight what we would have done different, or what things.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the first ones is we wouldn't accidentally troll everyone with daylight savings time calculations. I don't know if there's anything to say to that except sorry, we screwed that up. I think also everyone's experience of daylight savings time is leaving work on Friday and having everybody go, hey, remember to set your clock back so you're not late. And then everyone else goes, oh shit, you're right. Like, that's literally, we planned to do it a month from the launch of the platform, which was Valentine's Day, exactly a month before the Monday that we did it. And it just,
yeah, I mean, ideally, just try to avoid major events that involve daylight savings time, right? It really is the only way to do it.
Strange
Yeah.
conversion calculations on the time of day.
We got a question from Fried or Fried.
Oh, cool.
Fried.
So he's asking about the minion, and so the minion is one of the pieces of the DAO, which allows kind of like this really simple DAO contract that we use, the Moloch, to interact with the rest of the world. It's like an interface piece. It allows the DAO to vote on arbitrary function calls against any smart contract, basically. So the question is like how easy will it be for someone to alter the function of a minion? So the vanilla minion is basically you put in the contract call you want to execute, and what the contract address is, and then the DAO votes on what that is. So at that level, it basically can do whatever you want. It's a little more technical because you have to know the contract's address, and if the contract's verified, the UI will try to pull in the ABI and allow you to build it. If you're used to a safe, your Gnosis safe, it's a similar interaction to when you do contract transaction, I think, in that.
Transaction builder, yeah.
Yeah. Now, because that is a little more technically complicated, we've also been working on minions that are more forged. We call them forged tools. So it may be like, we want to build a minion that interacts directly with this NFT contract. And then we can build a UI around that where it's like, okay, this minion sends NFTs or holds NFTs and sells NFTs or whatever it is, that the DAO can have that engineered specifically for that purpose. We have one that we're building right now that works with Superfluid, which is a streaming payment solution. So that's the idea where a DAO could have, like a payroll account, and they can fund that payroll account, and then it streams the payroll out to whatever addresses that it's voted on and approved. It could also then vote to cut a stream. So the minions can get very specific, but the vanilla minion is very broad, and the UI right now, like in the minion settings, doesn't have all the functionality that you might want. So it's still, we'll be adding more even to the vanilla minion to make it like a little more obvious. It's basically like, you can think of the minion as either an interface to another contract or its own kind of like satellite bank that's connected to the DAO treasury. There's the main treasury, which is directly accessible by the members, even through Rage Quit. But then like we've had a ton of feedback where it's like, well, sometimes we want some funds that aren't accessible because they're operational funds or whatever they are. We don't want our a DAO member to exit with their funds because when they rage quit, they're taking their fair share of the treasury. It's like we've decided as an organization that we want to fund this satellite bank, and so since we've already decided that, that shouldn't be part of this rage quit. The main treasury should be, but these other vaults, these satellite banks should be, they're earmarked for something already.
Right. That's a great example that sort of came up early on in our project, because it was sort of, you know, if as a group we're budgeting for, you know, paying people, like you shouldn't have the right to rage quit out and hurt other people in the group materially in certain ways. You know, there's the power to vote by taking your money with you, but like if you previously voted to allocate budget for 3 months of paying someone to do something, you shouldn't be able to walk away with your responsibility for that decision just left hanging there.
And then there's these more specific minions, like for the CCO, we're using one called transmutation, which has, so the house tokens have been locked up in another contract for the DAO. And then there's a proposal that will swap the funds into our dev DAO. So we have a whole network of DAOs that are working, swap the WX DAO into our dev DAO for future development and replace it with the house tokens in the same transaction. His other question was about the apps inside or our Boost kind of store that is slowly forming. So this is like one of our key things we're going to focus on in our next building phase is this idea of an app market. And we have some really interesting ideas around like having these apps subscription based or one-time fees, maybe based around NFT roles, but kind of like app store for Apple or whatever. A developer could create it and they could set a price for what like this special minion does or whatever. So there's like, here's our super fluid payroll minion. It adds this functionality to DAOhaus. If you're a DAO that needs the payroll functionality, you would add that minion as an app, and as a DAO or as an individual, maybe you would put your funds or subscribe to it or whatever it is to pay for that, and then those funds would go to, in part, the developer. It would probably be a split between the DAOhaus platform as a platform fee and the developer who developed it and is maintaining it. So that's something like we're actually really excited about, because it's like we're opening up this composability of DAOs and also the open source kind of idea, a way to monetize open source and have the dev teams behind the apps actually get paid when DAOhaus platform uses their stuff.
Yeah, so broadly, to put a cap on the answer to the question, the minion is a smart contract, but that's controlled by the DAO. So it can do anything that Ethereum can do in the end, if the devs build it that way. And then the marketplace is, you know, the idea of, we want to make that easier because not everybody's going to have the Solidity expertise to program it to do what they want. And we want DAOs to be, you know, as accessible as possible.
Yeah. So to finish up with his last question is, like, the DAO, to open a DAO will always be free. It'll be up to the devs of these add-ons. It's kind of like a WordPress add-on, how much those cost. And if there's a market, then we can see like competition there and all those things.
And ultimately it'll be up to the Uber house DAO questions of, like, you know, is this a place where house tokens come into play inside of the system?
Yeah, there may be some utility with that.
Not
Not
really up to us.
DAO will probably also be in charge of like curation.
Right. Cool. To keep moving on.
The last question they had was kind of good too, though. So the current state of the DAO contracts are upgradable with apps currently. I think that's an interesting question. And I think, well, yeah, you could probably answer it way better, but the way I kind of think about it, yeah, the Moloch DAO contracts are like super simple and battle tested and awesome. They've distributed a shit ton of money over years now. So these apps are basically just extensions on top of that. We don't want to change the core DAO contracts. Those are battle tested and have lived through lots of battles basically over the years. And I mean, there are things happening at the base contract level for sure, different various innovations, but mainly I think on minimization, minimizing those contracts to maximize security and usability and composability. So that's where these apps come in, and the minions really to extend, keep the DAO contract as simple as possible, and then allow communities that use those DAO contracts to add whatever extension that they need for their particular use case is kind of how I think about it.
Yeah, and the other reason to keep it so simple is it's a learning tool. I mean, it's a single contract. If you look at some of the other DAO platforms, you can have 10, 20, 30 contracts that are all interacting with each other. It becomes for a dev to interact with it, especially a new dev that doesn't know like now your proprietary stack of all these contracts, it can be kind of hard. So that's the other reason why we were like, let's just try to keep it simple.
For sure. Sweet. So to keep moving through, unless there's other questions, some of the stuff, the we could have done better stuff. People might see once they start looking at the CCO page that the number is actually a tiny bit higher than the cap that we set. This was something, I guess, sort of funny that happened, but again, a learning. 263 proposals got in total. After number 262, there was something like 300 DAI worth of space under the hard cap, and the last transaction to come in was for the full 5,000. So there's sort of a question there of what do you do? It seems like both answers are unfair. From a practical standpoint, I don't even know this. From a technical standpoint, like we can't like send change back, right? So accepting that proposal is either all of it or none of it, which would then it almost creates a paradox because then we're still not at the hard cap. And so like, what is it fair to, I mean, we can't skip that person and check until we get an exact, it's not like darts where you have to get an exact score to win. That's not fair either. So, so in this case, that 263, that 263rd proposal got in. And so for anyone that looks at the CCO page and goes, what the hell, it's over the hard cap by 4,000 something, that's why on that one. That's sort of an interesting technical question. I'm not sure how you solve that one. I mean, it could just be $2, two DAI over, and then, who cares? But in this case, it's higher than that, so it's a noticeable number. And
yeah, I mean, I think practically speaking, it's fine, right? You have a maximum contribution amount, which in our case was 5K. So everybody, as far as like the participants were aware, like that's the maximum that they could do. And given that it happened in 80 seconds, there's like no way to be able to like get that like accurate data back from chain quick enough to let them know how much they can do at the time when they push that button. There's way too many different things in between those two things. So practically speaking, I think it's whatever.
Yeah, there would have been like one block where everyone was still doing 5K, and then those would have all failed, and then the next one, people could have seen that there's only $100 left.
And then and then someone who came in later with like the exact amount got in or something, which would be even worse. I think anybody who like got in, within their time or whatever, I think that just works fine. I mean, the other way to do it could have just been, okay, well, you can just cancel your proposal and then resubmit this exact amount because you were the last one to get in. But that just takes a lot of coordination and is also kind of sounds a little fishy to me, honestly. Or it could appear fishy to people outside of the circle.
Right. I think the last thing that came up was the quote unquote early transactions. So, my broad understanding of whatever that is exactly is essentially the first two transactions into the CCO were under 25 seconds early. That was our first, like, what if this is bots signal. I think after looking at it very carefully that it wasn't. It ultimately, and we'll have a write-up on a lot of this stuff if people want to, sort of dig in more. That'll be coming out, I think, later today. But this one, again, was a thing that, we was something we could do better in the future, and it's an easy fix. But the UI was doing the gatekeeping based on local clock times, basically machine clock times instead of server clock times. So I think my understanding of what happened there was most likely somebody's chip was just 20 seconds fast in terms of their local clock. Otherwise, it doesn't, we have no reason to believe that this was nefarious or that any sort of, it wasn't leveraged for any sort of attack, which I think ultimately speaks to the strength of the community, that there weren't people trying to cheat if they did find that exploit. Or maybe we're just lucky that wasn't leveraged harder.
Yeah, there were definitely people who did try to bypass the system.
Yeah, in other ways, but that didn't work. So
right. That was the hardest choice in all of this and this was the human choice of being like, do we let these two that came in just a few seconds early? Do we let them in? Because of our server clock was a few seconds after it, or the blockchain clock was. And yeah, we looked at it really closely, and they were bots, and we actually talked to some of the people that had that issue, and it was like literally like they had their time was just a little off on their computer, so we had to make that as a human choice, and I know that that's been probably the biggest piece of contention, and also probably the thing that we really need to fix. And we have actually now going forward, but it was oversight, or really because we weren't expecting this kind of volume. We didn't think it would be a problem. We thought this was going to be over 4 days, and not
right,
not a minute,
not like two blocks,
not a minute and a half, right? But yeah, in the end, that was two transactions, right? So in the world of ways to do, fundraising for community effort, like this, much bigger and more problematic things have happened. So like I say, in a sense, it's lucky. In a sense, it speaks to the people taking part from the community. And it's fixed. So that's how that goes with this stuff. We learned from it within days. It's only Thursday. So
yeah, totally. I mean, we learned a lot. It's true.
And then I think the last standing question is just sort of goes back to where we started. And I think let's get through this one quick so we can finish with kind of like the now what's, because I think a lot of people that have hung out for this want to know, what's coming up that they can get involved sort of for the next thing, whatever it is. But before that, I think the last question is, was it too open? In the end, do we have too many people on the whitelist, or like what did, I think what it really comes down to is there were people who have been involved in the community and followed along and, come to these calls and stuff like that feel like they were left out in the end because they didn't, make it through the door in that 80 seconds. And that's certainly not a thing we're happy about. You know,
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, personally, I don't think I have a conclusive feeling on that yet. But yeah, still process. I mean, always. I mean, in the space, we're always trying to find the most open and fair way to do these types of things, right? So, um, yeah, I think there's just like information to process there. I do. I mean, a lot of early contributors here, have earned house through work. So that's cool. So I don't feel too bad for them, for example. But there are lots and lots of people who are like just outside of that ring of direct contribution that weren't able to get in. And I think that ring of contributors, I think it's just like a bunch of concentric circles from the center of contribution is kind of how it spreads out. So that ring of like just outside of direct contributors who were not able to get in, I mean, yeah, a lot of us included. I think is where I would feel bad, but at this, it's a balancing act, right? It's like you want to let in external community, or you want to extend the what like or make the membrane more permeable, to your community. And at some point in time, that is progressive decentralization.
right.
So, and with 200 spots available out of whatever 100,000, like there's going to be a lot of people who don't get into that. But yeah, I don't know. Like you said, it's more about like that's literally just one way to contribute here. There are infinite ways to contribute here to get house. That's just the laziest method, honestly.
Like what I've been saying is if anyone has, this is a thing that like concert venues have been trying to solve for a century, right? Like, how do you make it fair that of the 1,000 fans of the Rolling Stones, like only 100 of them get to be down on the floor, right? And they have all kinds of weird lottery systems and like line systems and ways to try to make it fair, or at least random, which then feels fair to people because it's not discriminatory, I guess. But like in the end, it's just we have to come up with new systems and we have to test them. And if you want to get involved, we have a camp called the Alchemists, and that's all they do all day is talk about tokenomics and token systems and CCOs and ways to do this and set it up. So, come help us solve this part of the problem and earn some house. Like, if you're in Discord, you're already in the right place to talk to us about it. So,
yeah.
And if you're really just wanting to get started, then and learn about what we're doing and give us feedback on what we're doing, then Foundations, is a good place. And then that's basically open to anyone that wants to apply and start giving us feedback. And there's going to be a lot of opportunities in that group to be rewarded. So
yeah, so I think the last thing is, do you want to talk about some of those? I mean, it's a perfect segue into some of the opportunities. For example, Foundations DAO is going to be included in the airdrop of house. So, that DAO is going to get some house. It's going to be a pretty open DAO because, like you just said, anybody can get into it. So, it's not a way to make a big fat house grab or anything. But if you want to play with how house dynamics work in Uber DAO and stuff like that, Foundations DAO is one way.
Yeah, I mean, there's two ways there's two inputs for value, right? There's value extraction and there's value creation. And like, we're all here to create as much value as possible for DAOs, for decentralized communities in general. But DAOs are like a really excellent piece of software to help decentralized communities coordinate around things. But that's literally why we're here, to create value for that ecosystem and for every single human being who's doing that. That's it. I mean, we're not here to extract any value from anybody. So, that's my advice to everybody: is just create value.
Yeah, and we're gonna have our Uber House now, which is now all the DAOs in our ecosystem, which are now like the core team that's gonna be managing our token and how things go forward. We'll be giving out grants as well, and so those grants would be to other DAOs that want to become part of DAOhaus. So that's another way to participate. If you have a DAO and you have, you can apply for a grant and become a member. And so the members of DAOhaus, actually, those DAOs get rewards of more house. And so that's another way. Kirk mentioned the alchemist. We have 4 circles that kind of work on the product, or well, we have one circle that's basically focused on product. Those are the mage smiths. A circle that's focused on ops around DAOs, and specifically the DAOhaus DAO now, not just the house DAO, but I'd say DAO a lot. And then we have the Rangers, which are going to be about content creation and marketing and community development. And then, the Alchemists, which are around token engineering and token economics. So like any of those places, like if those are any of your skill sets, they're always looking for more contributors. So that's another place. Like lots of house is going to be going out. We're really focusing on distributing this as much as we can.
Lots of house and lots of DAI. I mean, the point of raising what we just raised is to pay it back out to the people that contribute by doing work. And that's how you build the house. Ultimately, the house, it's the physical house, not the house, the token. But I'll say from the Ranger perspective, we need help. I am unfortunately getting pulled some other directions, so I have less time for things like this stream. But also, we need people with a better focus than I can provide on community development and stuff like that. We essentially just leveled up from a group of about 60 people to a group of 300. It's a different coordination game to do that. So
yeah, and a couple weeks after that, it'll be thousands.
Yeah,
and
as the token spreads out.
So that's a good CTA right there. Is that we need a new host for this show, which we do once a week. If you've got skills in streaming and talking to people, then hit us up.
Interest in DAOs,
Well,
and I'll be around to help out as well. I just don't have the same time that I used to produce and schedule and all those things. And then I think the last piece, if you did get in to the CCO, if you're one of the 263. You'll be able to claim your house tokens Monday after next, 2 weeks from the CCO. Is that right?
Yep.
And then what?
So at that point, we're distributing to the CCO. We're setting up the farms, which will be doing rewards if you want to become an LP. Or actually, we'll have a farm just if you just want to stake tokens that'll be going. So there's going to be 2 initial farms. We'll also be distributing our drops to all the DAOs that made the cut, in which happened in mid-February. So all of the active DAOs will be getting actually pretty substantial drops. And they become the governing pieces of this whole puzzle. All the honey swap pool will be open then. So if you just want to dump your tokens, you can do that too. Or if you just want to buy tokens, you can do that. We're going to try to get it open as possible this next 2 weeks.
And if you did get into if you're one of the 263, I like that, Kerp. We'll be getting you a NFT out as an achievement for making it.
And thank you for all that we broke this down. I don't know that we should have led off by saying thank you to everyone that contributed, and assured the next phase of the the DAOhaus experiment project, continues to go and build and grow and experiment, etc.
It's super exciting, and it's an incredible signal. I think, even though it wasn't perfect, it was a little messy. Things are going to be like that. We're just like super excited to be able to continue rocking with this, and I think like over the last few months, people saw the value we created, and over the next few months and over the next year, we're going to just create 10x more. So
stick around. And thank you for joining us today for the House Party Live. Hit subscribe. We might take a little break, but we'll keep doing this sometime in the future. And hopefully every episode will continue to be as informative as this one.
Thanks all. See ya.
peace.
Okay, stream's done.